Hey, Dethroners, welcome back to the Dethroning Your Inner Critic podcast. I am really excited for the conversation today. I have with me Tara Clark. She is an author, a speaker, a content creator, a podcaster, and the founder of Modern Mom Problems. And after being a mom and recognizing a hole in the online space for moms to authentically connect, she launched her Instagram account in 2017 and since then has built a big community. And welcome to the show, Tara. I'm so excited for our conversation today because I do agree we really do need a safe space to be able to talk about being a mom in today's world. Whew,
It's a lot. It's a
it's a
lot.
lot.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. So let's start by, I'd love to sort of dive into how you got started on your path to, and I'd love for everybody to hear what, how did this become from sort of an idea to the journey of where you are now?
Yes, I will take you through the entire thing.
Great.
My son was born in 2012, and when I was pregnant with him, and before that, I worked at Nickelodeon. So I actually used to work in social media at Nickelodeon. There was a time where I was Dora the Explorer on Facebook, and my mother used to run around and say, like, my daughter's Daughter the Explorer. I was like, yeah, on Facebook, mommy, on Facebook, stop. And so, because like moms are always like our biggest cheerleaders. And
Yeah.
when my son was born, I decided to stay home with him full time. I tried to go part time. I tried to work remote, but in 2013, that wasn't really a thing. So they just said, like, it's either all or nothing. And I said, well, it has to be nothing then. And so I stayed home with him. And that was a really hard decision because I loved Nickelodeon. It was the most talented team of people, so creative, just like such a fun working environment. So that was a hard decision for me.
Mm.
But then when he was about 3 years old, I had the idea of starting an Instagram account about parenting. And
Mm.
now, just to give you like a time wise contextually, this was February of 2016. Instagram had been around for a few years, but at that point, people were just like taking pictures of their lattes and posting about their sandwiches and stuff like that. Like people weren't really having like real conversations on Instagram at that point.
Yeah.
And so, and also there was like a shiny new website called Canva, which had
Mm.
just come out. And so at that point, I was like on the early side of using Canva. And so I said to my friends and family in February of 2016, I'm going to start an Instagram account about parenting. And my friends and family said, what? No, that's not even a thing. Like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, it's going to be a thing. I promise it's going to be a thing. And they're
Mm.
like, yeah, okay, yeah, good luck with that. And so I was looking for a creative outlet. I was looking for a way to connect with other moms and other parents.
Yes.
And so I started it. And so at that time, we were living in New York City, and I didn't really have a lot of mom friends. A lot of my friends were still working at Nickelodeon or they didn't have kids. And so it was pretty lonely. Here you are in like the largest city in America and, being lonely, which I'm
Yes.
sure happens to a lot of people. So
Sure.
I started my account, and then I started making friends with people from all over the country and all over the world. And
Yes.
it was awesome. And so then in the fall of 2016, we moved out of the city. And oh, I should, this is an important part. When I started my account, it was called NYC Mom Probs. So I was talking about New York City mom problems, things that sort of were inherent to living in a major metropolitan city. So at the end of 2016, we moved out of the city and we moved to the suburbs. And I had an existential crisis of like, I don't have New York City mom problems anymore. What do I have? And so in
Right.
April of 2017, one of my friends, she also has a big Instagram account. She and I were like going through like adjectives, like what should we switch it to? Like, what should I change it to? And we are like saying all these different things, just spitballing ideas. And I said, what about modern? And she was like, oh, I'd love it. And I was like, yeah, everyone has modern mom problems. And she was
Yes.
like, yeah, that's it. Do it. And so like a light switch, the next day I just like changed my account, and then the account just took off from there. And that was April
Wow.
of 2017. And then since then, I, had secured a book deal. I have a podcast. I have a clothing rental subscription service called Modern Mom Style Box. Like I've done a lot of different things, and I've been able to connect with moms, connect with parents all across the world, talking about the different modern mom problems we have. And here we are today.
Love it. I love it. So there's a connection here, okay, I think, between raising children in the world today and also having this dream and taking this dream out from your mind and turning it into concrete reality, right? And a lot of people will look at, maybe they'll look at another mom and, their kid seems to be great and their life seems to be great. Or they'll look at, somebody that's done all of the things that you've done, and they'll compare themselves to this ideal version of what that journey must, was like, right? And it's just, we go from, it's an idea, and then we go here, and then we go to the next level, and it's all, unicorns and rainbows and sunshine. And you and I both know, both as moms, right? I have 3 kids myself. So as moms and as entrepreneurs, that this is not in any way, shape, or form how it goes.
No, absolutely not. And people often ask me, like, Tara, how did you get to, the account size that you had? How did you get all of the different things? And honestly, it was just showing up every day. It was showing up every single day and not quitting. And when I first got started on Instagram, I had a very set core group of friends, and we were all doing the same thing. And most of them now are no longer even on Instagram. And so it just so happened that I persevered longer. I just stuck with it longer. And that was, not that was the only thing, but it was a big thing.
Yes. Yeah. So I would love to dive in right there. Okay. Because I would imagine, just like me and just like so many people listening, that there were, and maybe even still are, countless times where, with your business, you want to throw in the towel, you want to give up, this isn't working. With your child, oh my God, you know what? I've been going about this all wrong, and I've messed everything up, So when that shows up, what do you do to keep going and take the next step?
Such a good question, Joe. I'm going to break it apart on 2 different levels, because I do tend to compartmentalize my work and my family life. And so with work, throwing in the towel, I feel like that often. And it really happened to me after the pandemic with the explosion of TikTok and video content. I was, when I got started, someone who was writing funny quips as a mom humorist, right? So I was a writer, and if anything, maybe a bit of a graphic designer. I was not a video content person. And so then it became like, oh, everything's video. And I'm like, I don't want to do video. And that was the point where I really just wanted to just scrap it, because it's not that I can't do video. It's just, that's not what I love to do. And why should you be forced to do things that you don't find joy in? So that's my one thing. But when I feel like that, depending on the day, sometimes I push through and I make the video, because sometimes there's something to be said about challenging yourself and pushing through to get better at something so that you can get more ease with it. So sometimes I push through and say, you know what, just do it for today. Or you could practice that skill, or practice your editing, or practice your timing, whatever it happens to be. So that's what I do sometimes. Other times I'm like, I don't want to lean into doing video. I want to lean into doing the things I love, which is the written word, or an image or something. And so then other times I lean into the things that actually do bring me joy. So it depends how you catch me on a particular day.
And when you're doing this day to day, whether it's right, something that you love to do or something that you don't love to do.
Mhm.
What do you think is the bigger purpose, right? What's the thing that actually pulls you towards taking that next action?
People.
Mm,
Community is at the heart of everything that I
yeah,
do all the time, and it always has been.
yeah,
And I love connecting with people. I am a connector. I love chatting. I love learning their stories. I love hearing how they got from A to B, just as you asked me how I got from A to B.
yeah,
So I love people, and I love the commonalities that we share as mothers, and also the differences that we share as mothers. So
yes,
that's a huge part of why I do the things I do. So I create content or books or podcasts, whatever, to touch people. And even if it's just one listener out there who says, that conversation meant so much to me, or that post meant so much to me, thank you so much for that. That's why I do it.
that's so great. And would you say that the thing that really creates the connection and creates the community is your willingness to be real, to be vulnerable, to be authentic?
Yes, I think so. It's whether it's me or whether it's someone that I speak with on the podcast, or
Yeah.
I mean someone else's content that I share. If it's a good friend of mine and she said, "Hey, can you share this for me? I want to get the word out on X, Y, and Z," and I'll say, "Yeah, absolutely."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think storytelling is key. I think vulnerability is key. It all
Mm.
plays a part, because I think ultimately everyone is trying to see a little bit of themselves in everyone else,
Yes.
and they're trying to attach to saying like, oh, that story resonates with me here, maybe it doesn't resonate with me on that aspect, but it does resonate with me on this aspect. And so I think that's what everyone's just constantly trying to
Mm.
navigate in the digital world and in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you think is one of the biggest challenges or obstacles in your life that you've had to overcome? And looking back, that it really taught you something about you and your life.
I think, and not even that, I think, I know that social media comparison is a
Hmm.
huge issue right now,
Oh,
because I speak to so many women and so many moms, and not just moms, parents, men, just everybody. Social media comparison is just really at the forefront. You pick up
yes.
your phone to try to get 5 minutes of fun me time scrolling, and then you're sucked into who has the more beautiful white kitchen and who's on which vacation and who looks thinner and just all the things.
Yeah.
And when that starts to creep in for me, I have to
Mhm.
put down my phone,
Yeah.
do something non-digital,
Yeah.
and be grateful for the wonderful things that I have in my life. I have so
Mhm.
many fantastic things in my life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my life may not look like someone else's life, and their life doesn't look like my life. But you know what? I have so much to be grateful for. And
Yes.
so I think for me personally, that's my antidote to that social media comparison creep. And
Yeah.
it's so hard to break through from that. But once you do, then it's so freeing. And then also going back to like the creating content thing, right? Like, I wish that I was better at picking up the camera and then just going on a rant, or just picking up the camera and just talking to it and doing it like that. I have many friends who are extraordinarily successful content creators who excel at that particular talent, right? That particular skill. I am not
Yes.
one of those. I am
Right.
better in a conversation format. I pick up the phone and I freeze and I clam up. I would rather stand in front of a room of 500 people giving a talk than I would sitting in my room alone, holding my phone and speaking directly to my phone.
Yeah.
That's just my personality. That's just my skill set. And so
Yeah.
once I was able to tap into that, speaking of, your inner critic, I'm always like, oh, Tara, you should be better at this. You should be better at that. And
Hmm.
when I realize, no, that's not my strong suit. My
Yeah.
strong suit is speaking in front of people, being on a podcast, being in person. Those different things come across more authentically than
Yes.
my being on the camera talking one on one.
Yeah.
And so, what I would say there is, know what your strengths are
Hmm.
and lean into those.
Yeah.
You know, don't feel bad or beat yourself up for the certain things that you may not have, or there's certain skills that you may lack. And again, I did say sometimes you have to push through and say, all right, maybe let's practice being on camera. Maybe let's push through that uncomfortable feeling. But if it really genuinely makes you feel like garbage,
Yeah.
then maybe lean into the things that bring you joy and that you know you're good at. And so
Yes.
that's what I would say.
So you said two things that I think are key. All right. And I think the first thing that you said that's so crucial is plugging yourself into what you are already grateful for. And then also plugging yourself very consciously and intentionally plugging yourself into what you already value and appreciate about who you already are. And, you know, social media and the culture that we live in today. And it's not just social media, by the way,
Yeah.
right? We
Right.
teach our children, like, right? Oh, you know, you're doing all of this to get to the good college, and then you're in the good college to get to the good career, and then you're in the good career to get to the money, and right? It's all of this arrival point goal and status, right? So even when you're scrolling on Instagram and you're looking at the big kitchen, you know, the big white kitchen, and you don't have the big white kitchen, you know, it's the comparison game is all about automatically focusing on who you're not and thinking that once you fix something, change something, get to an arrival point, get to, you know, that reach that goal, that's going to be the thing.
Yes.
And I was actually just reading something this morning that said that this is so fascinating, you know, just in the context of this, right? And this is whether you're raising kids or you're creating a business or really doing anything, okay? Olympic athletes report that they are actually happier in their life, right? If they look back on their life, they're actually happier at the time that they are pursuing the gold medal than when they actually get to the gold medal. And so what I think you're pointing to here is that by intentionally sort of grabbing your automatic mind, right? Where, you know, it just gets triggered by the white kitchen and pulling it back to, okay, let's focus on right here, right now. Let's focus on what I've already created. Let's focus on the community that I've already created. Let's focus on the connection that I've already created. Let's focus on what I'm already good at. Can you talk about when you plug yourself into that? How does that change your experience of yourself, and how does it change your experience of your life?
It changes everything. I mean, it is a game changer. When I stopped forcing myself to try to fit into this certain box on social media, and I'll use that example of picking up my phone and just like ranting into it as the camera, right? Because that's the most like tangible thing I could think of off the top of my head. Once I stopped saying that's not who I am, and I put that to bed, then I now am speaking at different conferences, getting standing ovations, and people are like, bravo, thank you for your insights. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for bringing the high vibes. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I do have talent. It may not be talking to a little rectangle box. It may be talking directly to people in person. And that's where I feel so empowering, because when I empower others, it empowers me, right? And we're all together in this big world, all helping each other. And we're all exchanging that energy together. And it's huge. And so my advice to people would be like, shed that feeling of, you know, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And once you shed it, it is just a huge game changer. And, you know, going back to what you were saying about like even our children get into the grind of like, you have to get into a good college and a good, you know, let's just say graduate program, all of those things. So we have an 11-year-old son, and we recently, for lack of a better term, got off that train. We put him in a new private school. It's called Acton Academy, which is learner driven. So the children are in charge of their own education.
Oh,
and
so
which is
great.
awesome. And he's
Oh,
thriving like I've never seen him thrive before.
amazing.
He's just
Yeah.
loving it. He is just he's an entrepreneur now. They're having business fairs. He talks about money and saving money and investing, things that he never was talking about in the traditional public school. And so
Amazing.
he's just thriving, and we love it. And he's happy, and we're happy. And once we got off that train of that high achieving, you
Yes.
have to get excellent test scores, you have to get into gifted and talented, you have to be in these particular extracurriculars. It was so freeing. And
Yeah.
then we saw him at the young age of 11 years old
Mm.
open up. It was like a little nut that you just cracked the nut, and like out popped this beautiful seed. And he's thriving in a way that he otherwise would not have been had we continued on that trajectory of the test scores and the get the right high school and the right college and everything like that. So whether you're 40 something years old like me or 11 years old like him, it's important to find what you excel at and really just like embrace it and lean into it.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I mean, our educational system needs to be completely revamped. That's a whole other podcast
That's
episode.
a separate episode.
Right. Let's not even go there. And that's fantastic that there is actually a school that creates that. But what would you say to other women, okay, whether we're talking about our fear and doubt that gets in the way of our parenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or our fear and doubt that gets in the way of pursuing our dreams, it's really the same thing.
Yes.
And mostly, I think what happens, right? Our mind automatically focuses on this future fear. What if I'm not doing enough for my kid? I gotta push my kid to be more successful. I've got to push my kid to be more social. I've got to push my kid to be more driven, right? And it's the same thing that we're trying to do with our life. I've got to push myself to be more of this, and I've got to push myself to get there. What would you say if somebody's caught in that vicious cycle?
We were caught in it. We live in a very competitive school district. And so we were in it, right? I mean, we couldn't have been in it any more than we were. And so
Yeah.
that's why I joke and say about we got off the train. Now, not everyone obviously has the opportunity to do that in the way that we were able to. So let's say you have to stay in the same school district or stay in that same situation. You have to then find ways to make it work for you and find boundaries to make it work for you and your family. And it's interesting what you were saying about the self-doubt that we as women carry with us so much. That the one thing I have to say is I know that I'm a better mother than I am a business person. And
Mm.
so
Mhm.
so there's one thing, like I am so supremely confident in my parenting
Yes.
because I became in tune with my son. And once I stopped leading him and like as if, I had, I'm saying this metaphorically, a leash and I was pulling him around. Once I let go of that and let him lead, it was a game changer. And there's one of my favorite parenting, I guess it's a bit of advice, I would say, is step out so they could step in. And
Mm.
once you do that, it is, I know I keep saying game changer, but it is a game changer. You step aside, let them lead, let
Yeah.
them come up with their own solutions, let them come up with their own creativity to fix their problems. And I'm not saying every single thing all the time. Of course, you're a parent, you have to step in sometimes, but you have to pick your battles, right? You can't step in for every single thing all the time. So I would definitely say step out so they could step in to their own lives. And
Yeah.
then when it goes back to us about women having self-doubt, whether it's in business or whether it is in motherhood, gosh, excuse me, gosh, it's a lot. I mean, I constantly have a voice in the back of my head saying like, you should do this and you should do that. And why aren't you doing the things that she's doing? And why aren't you doing that? And you know what I do? I didn't even realize that this was like a CBT thing, but I sometimes take my hand. You probably can't see it, but if it's not on video, I put my hand up by my forehead and I pull the thought out of my mind. I pull that negative thought out. I crumple it up like a piece of paper. Watch, I'm going to do it for the audio. And I imaginarily throw it into the trash can.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. And that has helped me For years. I've been doing that probably since my like early to mid 20s. I will
Mm,
literally put my hand by my forehead, grab that thought out of my brain, crumple it up, and throw it away. And so I would suggest the same thing to you.
I love that. And I think what connects those two, whether you're talking about, your son and stepping out so you can step in, or taking that thought and throwing it away, um, in both cases, you're letting go. So whether you've got the thoughts about your son or you got the thoughts about yourself, tell me if you agree with this, but
Yeah.
probably both of those thoughts are some version of control.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to control the outcome of how this is going to go. I've got to control the outcome of his life, some part
Mm-hmm.
of his life. I've got to control the outcome of some part of my life
Mm-hmm.
by fixing myself and changing myself, by fixing him and changing him. And what you're saying, I think this is where so many people don't understand, is it's kind of paradoxical in that the more that you let go, the sweeter life becomes. The
Yes.
sweeter our children. I mean, right? You like it's like everything shifts when we learn how to let go.
A
And
thousand percent yes.
yes,
A
yes.
1000% yes. I feel like I learned that lesson late, but it was not that late. I was definitely not that mother when my son was an infant and a toddler. Now he's 11. So I like to say that I'm more of a veteran mother because, I've been doing it for over a decade.
Mhm.
And that was the biggest lesson. And I think that probably happened maybe when he was around 6 or 7. I don't know. It's hard because you threw the pandemic in there, and then everyone just like there was no sense of control there, or
Yes.
maybe there was because then you were just trying to control your own little world. Um, but when I learned to let go, that's when everything opened up for me.
Mm.
With him especially, I'm still trying to let go with certain things at work, again, like being on video and not talking to the camera, those silly things. And again, in the scheme of things, how silly is that? It's silly, but it's one of those things that you sort of like get hung up on, right?
Yeah.
It's that one little inner critic saying, well, you should be doing this particular thing.
Yeah.
And it's okay that I'm not, and I'm okay with not being able to do that, just like I'm okay with my son not doing a certain thing or not going to the public school
Yeah.
in town because he's thriving
Mm.
and he's doing things that he never would have had the opportunity to do otherwise, just by our letting go and getting off of that train of everyone, sort of like that upcycling of having to get success. And
Yes.
success is different for different people. For me, having my son be confident and happy and resilient, that's success. And is he also getting great grades and now he's excelling in leadership opportunities that he didn't have at the other school? Also, yes. So that's a win.
Yes.
But it happened once we let go.
So how did you learn that lesson? How'd you get there?
How did we get there? He was struggling in school last year. And I'm trying to figure out if maybe it was at that point. Well, I suppose so. He was struggling in school the year before. And we were looking to, I'm just trying to think of sort of where that came together. I'll say this. He was struggling in school last year,
Mhm.
and he was finishing up elementary school, but before we went to middle school, we were looking at other private schools in the area, and we happened to find this particular one, and it just blew everyone else out of the water. And we said, this is it. This is what we want to do. But again, it was getting off that train of being in a very competitive school district, caring a lot about the grades, caring a lot about the extracurriculars, which colleges everyone's getting into. And I think that was it for us. Learning to let go comes from a struggle. And I
Yes.
think that goes back to what you were saying about the control is,
Yes.
you're in this struggle, you're in this sort of, I don't know if dark place is being too dramatic, but for lack of a better term, let's say you're in this dark place. And once you come out of that, you see yourself on the other side of that. That's when you start to let go.
Absolutely. Most people want to try to prevent the struggle. That's where the control comes from, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel that feeling of uncertainty and unknown. I don't know where this is going with my son. He's struggling. I don't know where this is going with my business, right? I don't know where this is all going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying, which is, this is what the premise of the work that I do, right? Is that when you're able to actually lean towards the struggle, when you're able to use the struggle for your own growth, what's interesting in what you just said is that the solution kind of just appears.
Mm-hmm.
When we let go and stop trying to force it, the solution just kind of shows up when we least expect it, right?
Yes. And that's the beautiful thing about it.
Yes. Have you also found that same thing applies as you're growing your business?
Yes, because I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about leaning into the talent that you do have. Yeah. And not trying to make yourself like everyone else, because not everyone has the same talents. Not everyone can sit down and write a book. Not everyone can do a podcast. And so you have to take an assessment of what your interests are and what your skills are and lean into those. And then all of the other things you just put aside and said, those aren't for me. Those are for someone else. I'll let her do them. Joanna is excellent at those things. Let her crush those things. I'm going to go crush my things.
Right. That's awesome. That's so great. And so, what would you say now, okay, is the foundation to your joy, your fulfillment in your life?
Absolutely, my family. I spend my husband, my son, and I. We are just always together. And at this point, too, he's 11, so we're trying to like really hang out as much as we can before he's like, all right, see you guys later.
Yeah.
And so we've been traveling a lot lately, even just going like to local cities. We'll hang out in Boston. We'll go down to Philadelphia, go up to Boston, hang out in New York. Like we're just trying to just soak each other up as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Beautiful.
I love it. It's yummy. I think it's wonderful. We went up to Vermont this weekend. I've never been to Vermont. That was really beautiful. And so we're just trying to enjoy each other's company. And that's what brings me the most joy.
That's great. There's a really old study. There was a 75-year study on happiness and what constitutes a great life at the end of life. And they said the number one predictor of happiness and joy was the quality of your relationships. So I do want to ask you, because you told me before we started this podcast, you have been with your husband since you've been 15. I've been with mine since I've been 19, so I can absolutely relate. What do you think is the key to the quality of your relationship?
We are best friends. We've been together since we were 15. We went to the same high school. We went to two different colleges. I went to Villanova. He went to the College of New Jersey, which is only like a 45-minute drive. So we were physically close by. And then he went to medical school. And then I went to work after college, and I went to graduate school later. But we're just best friends. We have open communication. We love being with each other. We love to hang out. We love taking trips. We love watching television and doing nothing and spending time together. And just, I don't know, it's just genuinely wanting to be with that other person.
Great. And what's one obstacle that you faced with him that actually helped make your relationship stronger?
Yeah. I think I would go back to mentioning about college, because we didn't go to the same school. It was hard to make time for each other. He was pre-med and had to study a ton. And so that was challenging. But, obviously we came through that, and we were married shortly after trying to think of when it was like after med school, but right before his residency. So we were married fairly young. We were married at 26.
Mm.
Um, and that was challenging. College and medical school were challenging because he was so busy, but
Yes.
we made time, and here we are all those years later.
So great. So what advice would you give, right? If there's somebody listening and they're feeling frustrated in their parenting journey, maybe they're feeling frustrated in, you know, my children are getting older and, what's this next chapter about for me? What advice would you give?
Yeah. I think when it comes to, well, I was going to say when it comes to younger children, but that's what I said. Well, maybe it's also teenagers, is don't lead with judgment,
Mm,
right? Don't lead with that control.
mhm,
Lead with listening and curiosity and wanting to hear where they're at the time.
mhm.
And I think that is so key when it comes to parenting, whether it's 4 year olds or whether it's 14 year olds. You want to get to know your children for who they are, not who you want them to be or who you were hoping that they would be.
Mm,
And so that's a big thing.
mm.
Once you recognize and respect your child for who they are, not the concept of them, that is just as important as the letting go and being free. I think, as you said, like control is a huge part of this conversation.
Yes,
Huge part of it. Huge, huge,
huge,
huge part of it. And
huge.
I don't think that most parents think about that, and even business owners, right? Like obviously, like as an entrepreneur, like it's on you to control your business, but what you can't always control is the industry, the economy, tastes of clients, the zeitgeist that's going on, right? There's a lot of things out of your control. So the only things you can control are the things within, let's say, your four walls that you're able to work on and take care of. So
Mm. That's really great advice because you're right. It is control. And so many women don't even experience themselves as controlling. But when, right, then when you really get down to
yes.
their fear and their doubt and their struggle, right, underneath it's all about control. So it really does sound like, you've, it's like an ongoing journey of continuing to let go. And most importantly, to trust that your son already has everything within him. And so the more that you can, just kind of guide him, but trust that he's got it, he's already got it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he's thriving. And that's how you're thriving, right? Is by recognizing,
Yes.
right, I'm already good as I am. I don't need to fix or change anything about myself. I'm gonna tune into what's already great about him, what's already great about me, what's already great about my life. So I love that. Love that.
Exactly. Thank you.
So, where can my listeners find all the good stuff that you have to offer?
Yes. So it's pretty simple. It's at Modern Mom Probs. So I on Instagram, it's Modern Mom Probs. Facebook, I have a book with the same title. It's actually Modern Mom Probs, a survival guide for 21st century mothers. I have a
Mm,
podcast by the same name. I'm big into branding. So anything that's Modern Mom Probs, I'm your girl.
awesome. Thanks for this conversation today, Tara. This was really insightful.
Thank you for having me.